Oh, wait. Where did the sound effects go? Whoops. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Me Anything for the month of April. Now, if you're joining us on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to say hello. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, feel free to say hello. And if you're joining me here on this Zoom, again, feel free to say hello. Um, this is going to be, if you haven't been to one of my AMAs before, this is a very active session where we talk about not just what I've learned, but what have you learned too. And so the first thing we do when it comes to uh, our AMAs is for you to tell everyone here something that you've learned. And so, first question always is, what's one thing you've learned this month? Now that we're settled in, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'm going to set a timer and just chat away. Tell us what something you've learned. And if you're watching this in the future, feel free to play along. See you in a second. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And so let's talk about a couple of things that I've learned. So this is going to go similarly to the last few minutes, where I'm going to walk through something that I've learned. Then I'm going to give you some time to digest. We're going to talk about it in the chat. And then we'll go to the next thing. Right? The idea is to learn, chat, deal with questions, move on. And so the first thing I want to talk about is a removal as checker. And what I mean checker, I mean as a checker of comprehension. One of the hardest things to do when writing a strategy or thinking about a strategy is the idea of checking for comprehension. It's easy to talk about, it's easy to see, or it's easy to discuss when things are going well. If you're just saying things and people don't have to react to them, much harder to deal with things as uh, a function of comprehension, because comprehension is a forcing function for us to understand what's going on. And so, as product people, generally we need to check for comprehension, because without checking for comprehension, folks can say, yes, leave the room, and we're not going anywhere strategically. I've seen it happen tons of times, right? And if you've been doing this long enough, I'm sure you've seen it too. So, why do I say removal as comprehension? Why is removal as checker for comprehension? Why is that an important concept? Why did that strike me this month? Well, one, quitting is a strong marker. I'm As I've been going this strategic journey, one thing that I've learned a lot is strategy is all about forcing people to make decisions, whether they're making decisions in the moment or making decisions later. At some point, your strategy has to put people in a place where they're making decisions. And so, quitting is a strong marker for us to learn, for us uh, as a tool, because by quitting, you're forcing a decision right there. It's an active action. Removal forces choice, right? Choice allows for follow up questions, right? If you're saying that we need to remove something, or you're asking someone to remove something, well, they're going to ask why. And that why is a gateway into more of a conversation and more trust between the people. It's critical to understand how strategy works, and for folks to operationalize it, for folks to use it. And so that why question that people are going to bring to you is an opportunity to give them the nuts and bolts as to why this strategy is important and why the action matters. And lastly, we're overwhelmed. Our work in progress is very high. Almost every company I go to is trying to do a million things at once. And it's no, so that points to the fact that there's no problem with generating ideas. There's no problem with us trying to make something happen. The hard part tends to be removal. And so there's an opportunity to eat the frog every time we connect, and at the same time bring more focus to what's important. If we come in with the focus of removal, then we're in a position to um, find our level, find what we're doing, find how much we can do, and think about how we can make better decisions in the future by having this forcing function of taking things away, right? We can go back and we can look at what we took away and say, hey, was this important? Or more likely, we're going to find out that a lot of the work that we choose not to do may feel weird in a moment, but in general, if we're focusing on the right things and the right numbers, we'll move forward. So the implication here is, when you're working with teams, very important to ask teams what they would like to remove from to-do lists. What would you like to remove from your roadmap? What would you like to remove from the strategy? What would you like to remove from anything that the team is doing. Because by forcing that, you're going to force a lot of questions. And I know questions are scary, right? People have things in motion. People are going to feel some type of way about, oh, you're taking this away. I mean, this might be the golden thing. But when it comes to uh, that idea of removal, it's really going to be the thing that sharpens the team, sharpens your focus, sharpens your strategy, because it is only through removal that we know what we really stand for. And so, yeah, the other side of that is all those why questions are going to either force you to understand the answer to those questions, have you say, I don't know. It's going to force people to start asking better questions if they're not getting the answers that they look for, right? It's going to turn the tension up in meetings a bit more. And I think for a lot of the work that we do, we don't generate enough tension, right? We go back to our perspective corners and then we hide. And then we talk about the meeting, which is bad culturally. If folks are too nervous to talk about what their feelings are inside of a meeting, then we're culturally not where we need to be. And so we need to create space where that tension, where that tension that they feel can come up. And so asking a question about removing things is a good way to check that comprehension and then check your culture to see if it is a place where people are comfortable voicing dissent. So that's the only way you're going to get great. With that, on to the next timer. And we are back. I want to talk about quitting for a second. Um, this is something that the older I get, the more important it is to me because I feel like quitting is a clarifier. Quitting is something that helps us spring into new actions. Quitting is something that makes us better ultimately at the end of the day. And I will say I've been inspired by Annie Duke. Annie Duke wrote the book Quit. Recently came out. I think it's a New York Times bestseller. And what's impactful to me when we are talking about quitting really is baked into this quote from her. The option to quit is what makes it so that we can react to new information. Even further, it also is what allows us to make decisions under uncertainty in the first place. Just let us do things like go on a date, right? Imagine the first date you went on, and if you had to marry that person, yikes, right? In the world of what we do, ultimately we act like this, right? The first idea, the first project, the first initiative, the first strategy, the first anything. We often fall into the trap of feeling like we can't quit. Why? You know, a lot of reasons for that. But I think ultimately it's important to think about it like this. If we can't quit, it's like being forced to go marry that first date you ever went on. So that makes dating really stressful because either A, you don't go on dates because you feel like you're going to make the wrong choice. And B, even if you had an okay first date or a great first date, you're going to think, what about anybody else out there? What else is there for me? What else exists in the world? And so when we don't quit that initiative, when we don't quit that project, when we don't quit even the strategy that's in front of us, well, you're leaning into really bad inclinations. Why? Because we work in product development, and product development is a complex system. What I mean by complex is we're in a place where we don't know the endpoint. What's the endpoint of Gmail? What's the endpoint of LinkedIn? What's the endpoint of YouTube? What's the endpoint of Zoom? I don't know. Right? We don't know where the end is, and we have multiple ways to getting there. Right? All we have is a problem set that we're trying to attack. And even that problem set can change over time. And so we're working in this complex environment, very similar to organisms, right? That's why we're organic, right? Um, and so it's important for us to know, hey, when we're doing something, we have the opportunity to leave. We have the opportunity to quit. We have the opportunity to walk away because by walking away, and this is one of the key things that Annie Duke hammers away in that book, is by walking away, you have the space to find something new. And ultimately, the data suggests that people who quit and end up with better results than those who don't. So a few things that are top of mind. One is do not leave it too late. Research says we almost never quit early enough. So when you're feeling that you need to quit, you probably should. Right? If you have that inclination of like, maybe this isn't worth our time, probably should. Right? Because ultimately, if you don't, you're probably letting something go into production. You're probably letting some initiative run that's just wasting time, money, and energy. 2, set kill criteria. Ask yourself what will make you quit and follow through. Now, soft promotion for survival metrics, which is a whole methodology around setting kill criteria, setting pivot criteria, setting investment criteria around a strategy. And we can talk about that whenever you like. Just send me an email. We can talk survival metrics all day. But even if you don't use survival metrics, what's important is that you set kill criteria. You ask yourself what will make you quit, and you follow through on that. because it's a lot harder to quit in the moment than it is to quit. Um, a lot harder to quit when you don't have anything set than if you just kind of let it hang willy nilly. And then lastly, stay accountable. You want to have people outside of the decision around to keep you honest. And this could look like a coach. This could look like a pal from another place. This could look like a friend. This could look like a partner. Just keep people around that'll help you say, well, you said you were going to quit if you saw X. Well, X is here, so let's get quitting. Because yeah, this stuff is hard. It's really hard to quit because it's personal, right? It's really personal. And so the implication here is in ambiguous places, it's really, really, really important to um, quit because by quitting, you're going to understand, you're going to make room for something else to embrace. You're going to make room for another date with another person. You're going to make room for a place to invest for things that are working. And so asking yourself or your team, similar to the last thing, what's one thing you can quit today? Or asking yourself, what's one thing I can quit today to level up? What's one thing I can create space for by quitting? Who's going to be my accountability partner? What's my own list of things? Um, one thing that I really really appreciate from this author named Asim Talib in the book Anti-Fragile is he talks about um, writing your resignation letter before you start a job. And in that resignation letter, you will write what are the things that are going to make you quit. And having that, putting that in a drawer, and then looking at it every few months, right? That acts as a kill list and an accountability partner for yourself. And so it's an opportunity. We're going to go back to the timer, and I want to think about it. I'll be in the comments. Let's talk. Let's chat, and see you in a bit. And welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, if this is your first time coming to an AMA with me, I like to talk about two things in the world of product and technology, and the one thing outside of the world of product and technology that's been helpful. So, I do this to mix it up for us to, learn something new that may be helpful. And so, we're going to talk about breath work. Um, breath work, how we breathe affects how we think. And this is something I didn't quite take serious until um, I read this book called Breath by James Nestor. And in it, he talks about the science of breathing and some of the things that we had lost in our modernization of how we deal with breath that folks from around the world understood, and some some things that we've lost in modernity. And so, um, one thing that's important about this book to me, or something that really speaks to me, are the tools that exist in the book to help you in your daily life. Now, some of them are more interesting than others. Like, I don't have taping your mouth as you sleep here, which I think is the big one for those who've read this book. That's what people tend to run to. Um, but I think the other thing that's important is there's some other things that are important. So if you look this up, you're going to see the tape thing. So let's go to some other things that are important. One, which is at the bottom, and I did not clear that box, but your nose is willing to help you or work with you. But you want to breathe in your nose more than anything else. Your nose is where you should be breathing. In fact, there's so many health issues that come with mouth breathing that it destroys your throat, it destroys your nasal passages, it destroys all types of things, right? One thing that he does in the book is he spends 2 weeks with his nose taped and then goes to a breath doctor, runs a bunch of tests, um, does it before and after, and whew, the difference is significant. So if you're gonna breathe, breathe through your nose. Next is the optimal breath. In the optimal breath for you is 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. So there's an opportunity for you to breathe in, breathe out. And that is, if you do that on a consistent basis, I know for me, it makes me feel settled, calm. I feel like I have more of my faculties when I'm working out. If I do that, if I do the 5.5 seconds in and 5.5 seconds out, I can recover my energy quicker. It's a very impactful tool that keeping in your toolkit. Just practice it. Practice it. Practice it when you're working out. Practice it when you're walking. Practice it. It'll help you breathe better. And then one thing, when I'm feeling really anxious, there's this tool called box breathing, and quite simply, you do 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4, and you do that for 2 minutes. And what you'll notice is that anxiety starts to come on down. I've used this in really dark moments, really stressful moments, and it's helped me regain my mental faculties. And so, again, this is something as simple as breath that's just really important to us. And I think one thing that we got to pay attention to is how we think, how we decide can be affected by something we change. Breathe better, feel better, make better decisions. Breath work is important. And just something as simple as changing some of the behaviors around your breath can lead to healthier outcomes. And so we're going to go on to the timer. back, and it's just time for Q&A. So I say this is AMA, so ask me anything. Just go ahead and write it in the chat wherever you are, whether that's Zoom, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Twitch. Write the question. I'll answer the question, and we'll go from there. I'm going to start with the questions that were pre-sent in. And we have a couple here that I will go ahead and do. And if it works for you, works for you. So first one was a question around how do I get into product management? What an interesting question for the time. I think there's a couple of truths that I would like to lay out. One, product management is very much a prestige job right now. People want to be in product because it looks good. People have sold a story about product management that I feel is not really true. Um, and that story begins with the idea that you are the CEO of the product. You go around, you just make decisions all the time. You present a roadmap. You get to choose what's on the roadmap. You get to and you get to tell people what to do, and you don't got to be technical, and you don't have to have any design skills, and you can just kind of walk in and just do the job. That is patently untrue. And so the first thing I recommend for people who are trying to get into product management is to pick another job in tech. And that job can be anything. It could be customer success, it could be sales, it could be engineering, it could be design. Pick another skill. You need to understand what happens in the business from some point of view. You need some point of view, and you need a point of view that is gained through working on discrete output. So, yeah, like go make the sale, figure out what that is like. Go retain a customer, figure out what that is like. Go ship some code, figure out what that is like. Um, Heck, even project manage, figure out what that is like. Then start thinking about product, because without that, and which is going to lead into the next thing that I'm going to say, uh, you won't have anything to hold on to. You won't have any anchor. Because the second thing that's important to know about getting into product management is that generally, when you walk into this profession, there is nobody there that's going to help you. Unless, and there's an asterisk by that, but for the most part, in general, you're going to be on your own. And you're going to be dropped into a company where folks are going to go, you're the product manager. And for all the beautiful things that you've heard about the job, you're going to be the first person that people come to and yell at. And so if you don't have a point of view, if you don't have some experience around this stuff, it's going to be a really hard go of it to start to get yourself settled into the role. Not saying it's impossible, but it's going to make it much, much harder for you. And the asterisk there is if you come in with an associate's position. The reason why that's an asterisk is if you come in with an associate's title, there's a few assumptions that you can make that I find to be generally true. One is that your whoever you report to has a responsibility to train you. Two, that you have somebody there that has the responsibility to train you. There's usually a director of product and a product manager, and there's a team that's going to help you get better at the job that you do. Um, and it's understood you probably don't have any responsibilities for the first 6 months to a year as you understand really how this works, right? Because a lot of the things that are external, even as far as college courses now that are starting to pop up, um, they may give you the information. It's another thing to apply it in a pressure field environment. And so that's what product is. It's a lot of pressure. It's not a lot of output, not a lot of guidance. And those that are good at it can maneuver through that ambiguity quite well. Now, if all that's true and you're ready to get into the work of product management, I think the first thing you should do is if you work at a place that has product management, try to shadow them for a bit. Try to learn what they do. Try to sit with them for a while. Um, you'll start to get an appreciation for the job, and you'll start to see it up close. Find out who the good ones are, hang by them, see what type of work they do. And don't be surprised that the hours might get a little longer as you do this, because unfortunately, I think especially until you get a bit more experience, it's a lot of trying to figure out things. I think second thing to do is look for places that have associate roles. Again, they are thinking about this from the ground level. They're looking to build product managers and teach them how to do the work. Um, I know for some people the term associate may go make them go, I'm not an associate. I've been doing work for. It's like that's where you should go, because any money that you think you're going to earn by skipping past taking a bit of a haircut and doing the associate's role, you're gonna lose, because you're gonna be behind the eight ball. Over time, that person with the associate's title is going to end up making more than you, right? If they like the job. Also, with the associate's role, if it doesn't work out, there are companies that are going to help you figure out where you want to go next. There's an understanding. But if you just jump into a PM role, they're going to fire you. And then that's going to be it. And so look for places with associate roles. Hang out and shadow as much as you can from places. If you know any friends, uh, do that. Go find some meetup groups, hang out, talk, get to know product managers, get to know what they're thinking about. Um, and uh, once you're ready, you feel good. I would say go look for a coach. Um, I mean, personally, I'm not a huge fan of how product management interviews and hires are happening now, but it's a reality, and I think a coach that is focused on helping you get your foot into the door is super helpful to get you started. And so, if you want to start in the world of product management, take the things I said before, keep that in mind, and then start down that path to begin your journey into product management. Uh, One more question is in. I'll look over here so I can find it. Somebody asked about starting strategy from scratch, and I think one of the things, more of us are starting from scratch than we like to admit, and because it's very easy to join a company and find yourself kind of in flight, in flow of whatever's going on, and you'll look up and then you'll realize that there is no strategy here. Folks are just reacting to anything that they can, reacting to customers, reacting to the competition, reacting to anything that they see, instead of thinking proactively about how they're going to be the best at what they do. And so when starting to strategize, I think it's important to map out what you already know. And the start of that, I would recommend that you pick up the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy and read it, because it's going to teach you a lot about strategy in general. And one of the tools that is in that book is called a strategy kernel. Um, and in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, leveraging that strategy kernel, which is really a one-page document that lays out a diagnosis, guiding policy, and some coherent actions, is really the starting point for a strategy. It's a starting point for you to hand something off. Now we could talk about all three of those sections, and so let's do it. Step one: diagnosis. What's the problem? What's the problem that you're going to try to solve? And think about that problem deeply, right? What causes that problem? How does it affect customers or users? How does that problem affect you, the folks around you? What are the stakes? What happens if you don't solve that problem? And what is a collection of problems that can be boiled down into this one kind of diagnosis, right? What's the important problem? And writing that out. And take about a third of a page. Now, for all these sections, I should also say you'll probably need to write a lot more than that third of the page that you're going to end up with. In fact, I highly recommend you go out and you go like write out pages and pages and pages of this. When I was learning how to do this, I would start with like 8 pages by the time you got, and then I would work it down to that half a page because there's going to be so much. There's so many things that are impacting a problem in a company. So you'll go out, you go talk to people, you'll go write all that stuff down, you'll figure it out by just kind of sitting and thinking about it. Uh, Next is guiding policy, guiding, and so these are the things that uh, are going to tell people what we're going to do when we, uh, how are we going to attack this diagnosis. I also like to put things that we are better at. What are our values? If you're a fan of survival metrics, great place for it. These are going to be the things that help people, that guide people, guiding policy, right? This is the thing that's going to guide people to the uh, right direction when working on the strategy. It's going to help them make decisions. And again, there's a lot that goes into creating a really clear guiding policy, but if you know a lot about the business, if you've been around, you could probably scratch out a draft of what are the values that we have. You could probably look up, the company employee handbook. You could talk to your boss. You could say, you can look at things that have succeeded in the past and things that failed in the past, right? You could write all that stuff down, put it into a guiding policy, and say, hey, this is what we do. We do this over that. And then lastly is coherent action. What are the next few steps that we're going to take based on this guiding policy to attack the diagnosis? And so, yeah, what are the next few things that we can do? Um, it's a lot easier to start from a page that isn't blank. And so, by offering some suggestions to people, you can begin a conversation. And so, you would take those things and you would put them in front of the team around you. And then you say, okay, like, what does this look like to you? Does this make sense? What am I missing? Right? You figure out what you're missing, go back, fix it. Okay, take it back to the team, right? You're starting a process in where you have a strategic document, you're getting feedback, you're learning about the system in which you exist in, and you're taking that down and you're putting it into something into practice, right? You're starting the beginning parts of having an alive strategy. And then, right, once you get into a place that's pretty solid, a couple iterations, maybe three, four, and say, okay, this is where we're going, right? You take a look against that strategy against the work you're doing and start removing things. Much like we talked about today, right? Quitting, removing his checker. Now you have a coherent strategy in front of you. We have what the problem is, we have how we're going to go solve the problem, and we have the next few actions. Does that match what we're doing now? If it doesn't, let's make it match. If it can't match, well, we have some questions that we need to sort out. Either the strategy isn't really taking in some factors that are super important, we're ignoring something, or we're doing work that doesn't matter. And so we need to just get over the fact that we're promising things. We just need to bite the bullet, have conversations, and shift our way into this strategy. And so, yeah, that's how you would start to begin that. We would start that strategy piece. Um, And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, Adam at theadamthomas.com, and we can talk through some of the more prickly points, right? Right, I can talk about these three things all day. This is a very high level of strategy, right? And once you get good at this, you get good at it, right? I can sit down and if you give me the information, I can bang out a draft of this, um, in a couple minutes. And I know it's going to be far from incomplete, but it's going to give it gives a point of view, right? And you can start to shape it from there. And with that, I don't see any more questions. I want to thank everyone for joining. This was a tremendous session. Uh, if you're watching this in the future, hi. Feel free to write a comment, send me an email. Again, Adam at theadamthomas.com. If you're on LinkedIn, feel free to send me a message. Feel free to send a connection request. I'm always interested to learn more. And for those in the Zoom, you have my email. All right. With that, thank you, and we'll talk soon. Bye.